Ministry to remain without substantive minister until next year. As President Mahama declares, he will not be rushed into a decision following calls by both the Speaker of Parliament and the NPP minority.
Those speculating about somebody going to be appointed tomorrow and all that, I mean, just take your time, go and enjoy Christmas, and then after Christmas.
Plus, all helicopters of the Ghana Armed Forces grounded as government confirms retooling of the Air Force will include the purchase of at least a jet for presidential travel.
Perhaps I should not be saying this, but it's necessary because of the need for transparency. They have only one functional aircraft, as I speak to you, and that is not acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. It is a general retooling. It will have aircraft for executive use, which is necessary because the president has to travel.
And controversy erupts in Parliament over President's decision to extend tenure of IGP for 2 more years despite hitting mandatory retirement age.
So you can do everything, but not all things are worthy of doing.
And tonight, Mineral Income Investment Fund comes under scrutiny as documents intercepted by journalists reveal how its top officials racked up over 11 million cedis in overseas travels without finance minister's approval.
What really went into it were a few things, that is the training, the conferences, because it's a mining fund. So we needed to go out to be able to get that visibility.
In business, Ghana Revenue Authority bursted 3.6 million Ghana cedis of tax-evaded products at 2 of the country's entry points.
And in sports, Ghana's Black Stars placed in pot 4 as FIFA release official appearance ahead of next month's FIFA World Cup draw.
And I'll take your views and comments all here on News 9055111197. And tonight, Ghana's Defense Ministry will remain without a substantive minister until next year. President Mahama today declared he will not be rushed into a decision following the death of Defense Minister Dr. Omani Boama, who died together with Environment Minister and 6 others in a helicopter crash. Both the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Babing, and the minority have demanded the immediate appointment of a substantive defense minister, especially following the military recruitment stampede that claimed 6 lives.
It's not an easy job. So please, even though some measures have been taken, I will direct our committee to follow up on the process and then also emphasize what others have said for us to expedite the process of appointing a substantive minister. It's not because the current minister acting is not capable, but we know the pressures on him. And so we need to have somebody who will come with full report.
We all know the finance minister doesn't have time. And I think that it is time for the president to look for somebody and nominate somebody to take over. West Africa, terrorism and all other things are becoming too endemic. We are having peace, but we are always threatened by a lot of insecurity around. And I think that we need somebody who offers leadership. It is his prerogative to name or not name, but I think that if you ask me, I would say that he should immediately look for somebody to take over that position.
And we have said it again and again, that appoint a substantive minister for defense to ensure there's proper leadership at the Ministry of Defense. Leadership is very key in military planning. Leadership is very key. And so no one should take for granted the risk. We kept warning that the fact that we don't have a substantive minister for defense is very dangerous. It is risky.
Well, today the president has delivered his response. I want to bring in presidential correspondent Maxwell Agbagba. So did the president, Maxwell, clarify when next year he will be making the appointments?
Well, Evans, he stated that early next year, after Christmas. But this comment actually came during a meeting with the Ghana Muslim Mission. So the president of the association had finished speaking. And in the president's remarks, he made a point about governing with just 58 ministers. He said some people doubted that the administration could govern with just 60 ministers. The president said the economic situation is now improving remarkably, even beyond the administration's expectations. And then he talked about when they first took office, he recalled pinching himself and asking what trouble he had stepped into, and stating that economic failure just showed how much they had inherited. He said what they did, God answered their prayers, and progress is now evident. And then he addressed the issue. We all saw how rife speculations were sometime last week about the appointment of a new defense minister. He dismissed the speculations about the new appointment and said that will happen next year.
It's taking a lot of hard work. It's taking fiscal discipline. We've had to be in discipline, all the appointees. We made a promise to appoint not more than 60 ministers, and some people said, how are you going to work with only 60 ministers? As I speak today, we're working with 58 ministers because, unfortunately, they say Allah gives and Allah takes. He took 2 of our comrades, and we haven't filled those positions yet. I can see people speculating he's going to appoint a new defense minister, a new environment minister. We're not in a hurry. I'll do those appointments next year after the holiday, the Christmas and the New Year. We'll fill those positions. And so those speculating about somebody going to be appointed tomorrow and all that, I mean, just take your time, go and enjoy Christmas, and then after Christmas we will take a decision on those ones.
So let's stay with defense a while longer, specifically the Air Force. Joy News is learning tonight that all helicopters of the Air Force have now been grounded. In a yet-to-be-heard interview on PM Express later tonight, Minister responsible for government communications, Felix Kwachifosu, provides further details on government's plans to retool the Ghana Armed Forces.
Perhaps I should not be saying this, but it's necessary because of the need for transparency. They have only one functional aircraft, as I speak to you, and that is not acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. We recently suffered a tragic helicopter accident, which claimed the life.
Aircraft, clarify. You know, helicopter can be aircraft.
Yeah, the CASA. That's indeed all the helicopters currently are grounded.
All of them.
Yes, they are broken down. Some of them are old, so even acquiring parts for them are difficult because they are no longer in production. The Z9 that crashed there was another one that was in operation, but subsequently has been grounded. There were another 2 that have already also broken down. The Mi-17 helicopters are also not currently functioning because you can't even find spare parts, to retrofit them. So the only one left is the CASA, which does all the things that the military has to do. That is not acceptable. So since we came to power, the Ghana Armed Forces through the Defense Ministry has been making representations and impressing upon government the need to retool them. And it is absolutely imperative. Evans, I can tell you for free because I've been reviewing the documents. And when the minister comes to Parliament, it will become apparent. If you put the armored personnel carriers, the 40 million that is outstanding, together with the 2 aircraft, 1 medium, 1 long range, and the 4 helicopters, it will come roughly somewhere around $300 million. So the claim by Honorable Abu Jinapo and his colleagues in the NPP that we are spending $1 billion to buy presidential jets is patently false.
So when I read the budget line, it talks about in 2026, you're going to begin procurement.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that that's where it ends.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's a 4-year period.
Absolutely.
So every year there's a commitment.
Absolutely.
And I checked, if you go to the appendix.
Yes.
They
call it multi-year budget.
Multi-year.
Yeah. Good.
And you
let me explain that.
You would end that at 13 billion.
But let me explain
by the time that you exhaust the
So to say that we are using $1 billion to buy presidential jets is plainly false, even from what you have said. So there's a multi-year budgeting framework. Recall that the president had said before, indeed the late Dr. Mahama, when he appeared at the Government Accountability Series, I think 2 weeks before the unfortunate accident happened, had announced that there's a $1 billion retooling package for the Ghana Armed Forces. So they will buy several equipment which are necessary to ensure that they are able to do their work in line until such time that we have what we believe.
But when you put all that together, you get 13 billion.
But that is total defense spending over 4 years. And it is not going to be spent on 2 presidential jets.
And that there is Felix. So the key question then is government buying presidential jets? I put that question to him.
The Air Force has said, indeed, it is in the report that I've referred to that I was studying before you came in, that for operational efficiency, the frequent breakdowns do not make it fit for the purposes that it was intended for. And that they think that over the long term, these breakdowns and the resort to other alternatives are making it too expensive to run. And so we are better off acquiring what they recommend will be medium and long range aircraft so that it addresses the problem. Now let me also tell you, and indeed, this is in the report, when the finance minister comes to perhaps it will be made public. They indicated, but even when the president rents private aircraft, the Air Force still has to sanction it. The Air Force still has to sanction it. Otherwise, it will not be permitted to fly. Now, the cost of renting a private aircraft, as President Akufo-Addo was saying, was $18,000 an hour. There are times when the president has to be outside of this country for about a week, and it's not convenient to let the plane go and come back because he also needs to travel. Sometimes there are several hops on a trip. If the plane remains in the custody of government for 1 week, that is $3 million. So if the president does 10 of such travels in a year, you're talking $30 million. It is not the best use of resources. So the Air Force recommends, the Communications Squadron recommends that, look, as part of the retooling process, let us put ourselves in a position where we are able to address this comprehensively so that we stop these haphazard, stopgap, unreliable measures that we are adopting.
So for clarity, the one long range and one medium range aircraft will both be for presidential use.
Not just, it's for the military use. Now, remember.
So, I mean, just to clarify, you know, the word presidential jet is a very controversial term in our election.
You see, the point is that there must be,
still be presidential jets.
The Air Force, all aircraft used by the president belong to the Air Force. Indeed, the president uses the CASA. I have sat in the CASA with the president on a number of occasions. The Armed Forces has requested for aircraft that enable them function effectively. If the president needs to travel, they will have one for his use safely, which they control.
Clarifies very specifically. These one long range, one medium range, are these in the mold of what we currently have as a presidential jet, or are a pure military aircraft?
As I've indicated, the Air Force has said, and indeed it is documented, it's right here on my table. They have said that they need a certain number of aircraft, 4 helicopters, 1 medium range aircraft that can travel, I think, 13 hours non-stop, and then a longer range that can travel 17 hours non-stop.
For presidential use?
Not just for presidential use. It can be used by senior government officials, it can be used by the president. Even the armed forces, top brass, can also use it. It is a general retooling. It will have aircraft for executive use, which is necessary because the president has to travel.
And that there is the spokesperson for the government, Felix Kwachu-Fosu, Minister responsible for government communications, Reverend John Ntim Forjo, joins me right now. He is a ranking member on Defense and Interior Committee in Parliament, MP for Ascent South. Also joining me is Colonel Festus Obwaji, retired, and author, also security analyst. I'm grateful, gentlemen, for your time here on News Night. We'll come to the subject of the grounding of all the aircraft that the Ghana Armed Forces own currently and the conversations around purchasing presidential jets and retooling the military. But let's start with the president's decision today and his communication to all of us that he's not in a rush to appoint a substantive defense minister. He says, go and have fun with Christmas and the New Year. When you return, he would then make a decision. Reverend, you're on record to have made a point that we need a substantive defense minister right now. Give me your response to the president.
Yeah, good evening, Evans. It's very unfortunate. The indecision on the part of President Mahama and even deferring the appointment of a substantive defense minister, although indefinitely to 2026, is reckless, it is dangerous, it is putting national security at risk at a time when Ghana is battling with a whole lot of crisis. We have a violent extremism threats, we have terrorism threats, we have a number of issues to do with Galamsey, which has become sophisticated national security threats, with Galamseyers wielding weapons that are more sophisticated than what the Ghana Armed Forces have, with men in uniform being running for their lives. We have Benjiri conflicts displacing over 48,000, 23,000 becoming refugees, 10,000 in Burkina, 13,000 in Ivory Coast. A number of issues. We have currently, as part of the Accra Initiative implementation, it is an original implementation of a military strategy in building our resilience towards threats of violent extremism and terrorism. Its implementation is being challenged as we speak. So in the midst of the sub-regional geopolitics and the threats we face, and in the midst of the heightened insecurity we face currently, and all the crises that we see happening in the Defense Ministry, Ghana Armed Forces, quarter by quarter, month by month, I don't know what else the President is waiting for to happen before he prioritizes our security. We are looking at our defense strategy. We are looking at the critical component in the national security strategy. We are looking at a key actor in our national security architecture. We are looking at a key actor in our regional collective fight against, security threats. And so, for you to combine a ministry such as Ministry of Defense with Ministry of Finance, having one person acting, I think it is really, really misconceived.
Okay, stay with me. I want to bring in Colonel Festus Abaji. Colonel, you agree with that assessment that this is reckless to delay till next year?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. If we want to be very objective, when you look at the state of the Ghana Air Force in particular, without even talking about the Ghana Navy and the Ghana Army, as a country we have been very reckless in the management of our defense capabilities, to have run down the capabilities of the Air Force to just one Mi-17 and one Casa 295. That is not an Air Force by any stretch of anyone's imagination. So the reality is that the constitutional mandate and other instruments like the National Security Strategy of 2020, which defines some of the threats and risks that the Honorable Ntim Fojo has talked about. The Ghana Armed Forces, particularly the Ghana Air Force, need to be retooled. So my understanding of the budget that has just been read is that the government has had to look at all the other sectors, the interior ministry institutions, the defense institutions, and other justice and security institutions, and share the resources of the state as equitably as possible. So if the government decides, and I think that is what the argument has to be, to acquire 2 aircraft for carrier, long range, medium range, the assumption must be that the aircraft will serve as frontline military use.
Not for executive
when
use.
Needed or as and when needed, will perform other executive functions. Personally, I would think it would be the height of mismanagement if any government decides to import or acquire 2 aircraft for executive use without the use by the Air Force. So the Honorable Felix Ofosu-Kwakye has been at pains to say that the aircraft will belong to the Ghana Armed Forces and will be used for military and defense operations or activities. But at the same time, when the need arises, we use to support the executive and other civilian functions. If that is the understanding, I don't see any problem with that. Look, the Casa 295 takes only 73 passengers. Less are the crew, all inclusive 75. Now that is less than a company. It's effectively 2 platoons with what we call their battle order. Now that is not enough to allow the Air Force to provide the armed forces with what we call surge capability, being able within a short period of time to deploy rapidly sufficient forces to impact any situation. We know that we don't have any of the helicopters, with the exception of the Mi-17.
In fact, it's all been grounded now, from what Felix says.
Excuse me?
It's all been grounded now. Felix confirms that we have none flying right now. None of the helicopters.
Well, so we don't have any air capability. You see, So this politics about whether it is going to be used for the executive or whether it's going to be used for the military, I don't see where the argument is coming from.
And can I retire very briefly on that other subject? The president today spoke about the calls on him to appoint a substantive defense minister. He says everybody who's making the appeals to him should relax. He will make that appointment next year, that he's not in a rush. Well, where do you stand on that? I mean, the Reverend Timfojo believes that is reckless to wait that long.
You see, in some of these matters, culture plays a key role. So in some jurisdictions, in some cultures, a defense minister dies today. Tomorrow, there will be a new defense minister, substantively appointed. But definitely in a period of crisis, which we are not in, if the government decides for cultural reasons that in our cultural settings, when somebody dies, like a chief or a dignitary, you bury them, send them off, and then you think about their replacement. I don't see anything wrong. There is a deputy defense minister. Then there is an acting defense minister in the person of the finance minister. So if the government is balancing the equation on the table, maybe trying to figure out who the substantive defense minister could be, granted that the government has a better security picture than the rest of us, let's give the government time. It's probably part of the politics to suggest that because the defense minister has passed, necessarily the following day there must be a substantive minister. But I'm saying that the delay could be attributed to cultural factors more than probably the technical defense and security factors.
Yeah, but making a decision about the defense ministry and Ghana's defense, really, should cultural matters come into play here?
Should what?
Should cultural matters come into play in assessing what is best for our defense?
All jurisdictions operate in cultural settings. Every jurisdiction. The way Nigeria is managing its defense sector is largely part of the Nigerian cultural way of, governing the country. The way Burkina Faso is managing its security challenges is part of their cultural setting. So culture is important. And I'm saying that in some cultures, even if you are at war, and let's go into the history of the Ashantis and so on and so forth. When an Ashanti king dies, immediately Ashanti withdraws from the battlefront. It is documented. To come back, lick their wounds, take time to install a new king, and then work out new strategies to continue with the war effort. So we're talking about risk. There is no evidence to say that Ghana is actually under attack from terrorists. They are all threats and risk. The government will assess the reality of these threats, if you like, materializing. So within those kinds of calculations, the government can say that maybe I don't need to be in a hurry. For the same reason that we say the defense sector is a very sensitive sector, the government needs to be very, very careful as to who it appoints to head the defense minister. If you ask me, I can tell you a lot about defense ministers that we've just had who were hardly qualified to be defense ministers. So I will grant the benefit of the doubt to the government.
Colonel Festus Obadi, retired, thank you very much. He's also an author and a security analyst. Reverend Timfojo, to the other subject now that Colonel retired talked about the government decision to retool the Ghana Armed Forces. Felix had provided some clarity to the government, the chief spokesperson, on the fact that we have all our helicopters grounded right now. On the subject of a presidential jet or not, he says, yes, the what they're buying is for the Ghana Air Force, but it will also be used for executive travel purposes. There's justification there, is there not?
Yes, Evans, just before I respond to that, it's the most preposterous for anyone to suggest that the culture of the country should delay the replacement of a defense minister. That is very bad precedent for our security sector governance, especially our defense sector governance. We have had a catastrophic recruitment process. We have had a helicopter crash report that is yet to be digested for the way forward to be instituted. And we have many defense crisis, leadership crisis. We have some national security crisis. And so if anybody thinks that by the dictates of our constitution, which in most cases equates the importance of a minister of state to the stature of a member of parliament, and in that wisdom requires a certain minimum number of days within which a member of parliament who has passed ought to be replaced. And in this case, in this tragic incident, the member of parliament for Tamale Central has been replaced with a new member of parliament having taken up his role. So if you think it's more important and to replace a member of parliament, and it is rather less important to replace Minister for Defense, that goes to suggest how the people in government view security sector priority. And in any case, we're talking about about 3 to 4 months here. No one demanded an immediate replacement within the first month or two. We never talked about it. We started prompting the president after 3 months. And if this is a posture, it is clearly indicating to our partners out there that the president does not take matters of defense seriously. And it is most unfortunate. Most prudently, Evans, what a president would have done would have been conventionally, even to appoint the interior minister as the acting defense minister, because the interior ministry and the defense ministry often work, they compare notes, a lot of the meetings are held jointly, and so it makes lots of sense to want, and they're all within the security sector governance space. So it always makes sense to appoint either of them interchangeably to act. But you have appointed a finance minister as the acting in a completely different sector. So they're getting their priorities all wrong.
And very briefly, in the interest of time, on the subject of retooling.
Yes, quickly the retooling. The NPP government has always pushed for retooling, modernizing the fleet of the Ghana Armed Forces. And we are on record to have initiated steps which came to the floor of Parliament and were torpedoed, were opposed by the NDC when they were in minority. When they were in opposition, they were key figures, Okudita, Blackwell, Broja, Jemfi, all of them, were on record opposing any attempt by the president to suggest the purchase or acquisition of another aircraft for use by president. So they opposed one, and now they are going to have 3, because they are proposing to buy 2 jets for use by the president, in addition to the Falcon which has returned. So it is most unconscionable for a government or a party who opposed even the acquisition of 1 presidential jet to be using luxury, attaching luxury, and prioritizing luxury of 3 presidential jets.
But Reverend Felix clarifies that these jets, at least the long range and the medium range, will be Ghana Air Force jets, and that one of them at least will have a executive function.
Evans, all the ones that we wanted to buy, none was going to a civilian, none was going to a private company. We were buying fighter jets for the Ghana Armed Forces. They opposed. We started discussing buying a befitting presidential jet to the Ghana Air Force for use by the president. They opposed it. And so if you have opposed all these, and all we needed was just 1 functional aircraft by the Air Force for use by the president. They opposed it, and now they are calling for 3. So there's a Falcon which has returned, and they are going to buy 2 more. Most unconscionable. So the people of Ghana deserve an apology for politicizing presidential jets. We have insisted Ghana doesn't need 3 presidential jets. We need just a functional one. The Falcon, we are of the view, has served its purpose. It has to be returned. We top up and we buy a Boeing business jet. I mean, a very, very big business jet that is fit for purpose by the Air Force for use by the president. Just one. We don't need three.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend. Reverend Ntim Fojo there speaks for the minority on defense and interior matters. So, Live Your News Night is on Joy 99.7 FM. Let's stay with the issue of security a while longer because the Inspector General of the Police, the IGP, Christian Tetayono, will serve for 2 more years despite hitting his mandatory retirement age. President John Mahama has approved an extension for the IGP following a recommendation by the Police Council. Already, the decision is attracting criticism from the minority in Parliament. Listen to former Defense Minister Kofi Amankwa-Menu.
This really do not augur well for, the full and the commitment of people. You need people to work for something. And by way of doing that, when they work, knowing very well that tomorrow they can be recognized and be made IGP. But then, you just cut it off because you have one person who probably will do your bidding. Well, I think it's for me, if you ask me, it's a sorry state. Precisely. And for me, it will even kill that spirit of wanting to work hard to see the police grow. Because after all, there will be nothing to look up to, nothing to fight for. So if I am there and I have about 3 years and I know that, look, if I do so well, commit myself to doing that to move the police forward, I will be recognized and probably be made the IGP if I happen to be the second in line. And then you have this IGP having his tenure extended. What it means is that I don't have anywhere going. I am completely, locked up. So you can do everything, but not all things are worthy of doing. So you really, it's a balancing act. And being a president, I think that these are some of the things you need to balance so well so that you can have, people giving of their best.
Well, still ahead here on Newsnight, Mineral Income Investment Fund comes under scrutiny as a document secured by Joy News review how its top officials racked up over 11 million cedis in overseas travels without finance minister's approval. Details after George is done with business. Hello, George.
Hi. Evans, and coming up in business, Ghana Revenue Authority bust 3.6 million Ghana cedis tax evaded products at 2 of the country's entry points. And government to be in construction of more silos for next year to help reduce post-harvest losses. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one stop shop for all your office essentials, Centers Tanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal. Welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, the Ghana Revenue Authority has busted about 3.6 million Ghana cedis of tax evaded products at 2 of the country's entry points. Now, this was after owners of the diverted products that was meant for Burkina Faso came through Ghana. The operation, which was carried out last Friday, arrested drivers after they failed to declare these goods. Now, Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Anthony Kwesi-Sapon, has been speaking about this.
Multiple trucks suspected of carrying uncustom goods were also intercepted. The intercepted goods include rice, sugar, tomato paste, beverages, textiles, and clothes. These items were either misclassified or undervalued as far as duties were concerned. Here again, the estimated duty ranged about 1.7 million Ghana cedis. So if we take a look at these 2 operations alone, through the vigilant actions of the Customs Division, Ghana Revenue Authority, in collaboration with national security and the military, we were able to prevent revenue loss of 3.6 million Ghana cedis, and therefore protecting the national affairs.
And that is the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Anthony Kwesi-Sapon. The government has announced that it will begin the construction of more silos in the country from next year. The move is part of measures to help control the current food glut that has hit the country in all sectors. In the agricultural sector, Eric Opoko is Minister for Agric and has been expressing the government's commitment to managing the situation, especially when it comes to the supply of eggs.
It is widespread. I mean, there's a glut everywhere. Yes, even the egg glut, you mentioned it. It's true. The Greater Accra poultry farmers wrote to me indicating that, Honorable Minister, every year between August and October, we experience glut. But what we are seeing today, we haven't seen it before. It has gone beyond October. And from the signs, it appears it can go beyond February. So if government does not intervene, all that we have produced in terms of eggs will go waste. Immediately, we inform Mr. President, and a directive has been issued that the Ministry of Education should step into the market, buy the eggs to support the school feeding program. And so, yes, there's a problem. But let me indicate here that during the beginning of the season, we anticipated that there will be glut on the market, but we were unable to anticipate the quantum of glut.
That is the Minister of Agriculture, Eric Opoku. Now, MTN Mobile Money says its partnership with the National Science and Maths Quiz aligns with the company's broader push for financial inclusion and youth empowerment. Now, speaking when the National Science and Maths Quiz team visited MTN Mobile Money Limited today, Chief Operating Officer Abdul Razak Saka Ali says that the collaboration reinforces the company's commitment to supporting educational activities that empowers the youth.
The platform that this provides for us to be able to further our financial inclusion agenda to educate people is quite big and it's quite important for us. So thank you for that. Obviously, when the opportunity came to sponsor, to be a part of this, it was a no-brainer for us. Again, not just because of the platform, but also because of our responsibility to support the youth and also education of the youth, which we think NSMQ is one of the faces of the education or the youth education in Ghana.
And that is the Chief Commercial Operating Officer at MTN Mobile Money. That is Abdul Razak Isaka Ali. Now, Pokuware School and St. Augustine's College have secured their spots in the grand final of the National Investment Quiz competition after a highly competitive 5 rounds to now go to the semi-finals. Now, the quiz tested student knowledge in key areas of financial literacy and investment. Executive Director of the Young Investment Network, Joshua Mensah, underscores the need to inculcate the culture of investment among the youth. He made these remarks at the semi-final stage of the competition.
These financial brilliance or these young people with a lot of financial acumen are educating the public on financial literacy and investment education. If you can look at what is happening in the country now, there are a lot of professional financial literacy in Ghana because most of them don't understand the basic rubrics of financial literacy. And this is what the National Investment Quiz Competition seeks to
apologize for that challenge there with our sound. And earlier you heard the executive director of Young Investment Network. That was Joshua Mensah. And that's all for business on Newsnight.
George, thank you very, very much. And we can do sports now. Hello, Mr. Grante.
Hi, Evans, and the Black Stars of Ghana have been placed in Pot 4 ahead of next month's FIFA World Cup draw. Now, Pot 1 includes the top 9 ranked teams in the world, including the 3 hosts, USA, Canada, and Mexico. It has the likes of European champions, Spain, world champions, Argentina, and Nations League champions, Portugal. Pot 2 has 2 African countries in Senegal and Morocco, together with the likes of Japan, Croatia, and Iran. Pot 3 has Norway in there, led by Erling Haaland. There's South Africa and the Ivory Coast also in there, together with Algeria and Egypt. So 4 African countries in Pot 3, and then Ghana and Cape Verde are the only 2 African countries in Pot 4, together with the remaining 6 countries that will qualify through the regional playoffs. So the FIFA World Cup draw will be held on December 5, and the Black Stars of Ghana are in Pot 4. Now the draw will begin with all the teams from Pot 1 being drawn into groups A to L. Then it will continue from Pot 2, Pot 3, and Pot 4 in that particular order. Now the UEFA Champions League continues later tonight. There's a big one at Stamford Bridge. It's become sort of a traditional Champions League tie, with Chelsea taking on Barcelona. It's produced some classics over the years. The commentary will be live on Hits FM from 8 p.m. Chelsea at home at Stamford Bridge up against FC Barcelona. That's all for sports, Evans. Back to you.
Thank you very much. And I'll be sharing your thoughts with the rest of the world pretty shortly. Just send me a WhatsApp. 05511119997 is the WhatsApp line. And documents obtained by Joy News Review that the board and senior management of the Mineral Income Investment Fund spent over 11 million cedis on foreign travel in 2024 without government approval. In 2020, the Finance Ministry issued a directive stipulating that no public service officer should travel on official business without prior authorization, with all such trips requiring approval through the Office of the Chief of Staff. But MIF officials reportedly ignored the rule, raising questions about how public funds are being managed. Joy News' Kwete Nati has more in the following report. We'll bring in that report pretty shortly, and I want to bring in pretty shortly the programs officer of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Campaign Coalition, Samuel Harrison, who's joining us right now on the line. We'll get the details shortly. Thank you, Harrison Kujo, for your time. This subject of travels always comes up. In fact, in the 2026 budget, the Finance Minister reserves a whole paragraph on non-essential expenditure, and one of the line items there is travel that requires approval. But we consistently see, as this special audit report highlights, that state officials, and in this case, a state agency like MIF, the officials there violated. Give me your thoughts weighing on this challenge that has plagued our public service for so long.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. So, on this issue of our public service and travels and certain allowances, I think that there is a bigger item at play than just the travels and the payment of certain allowances. And the bigger issue is the governance of these public entities. And for us, as the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, until we get the governance issues right, we are not going to get anything right regarding our public institutions and how we want to develop them and how we even want to develop good governance in the country. If we zero in on the Minerals Income Investment Fund, it's a big problem because it's an agency that got a lot of money and that had to use the money. But again, because of governance lapses, we see, some of these things that have come up in the audit report. Now, this MIF was started in 2018, right? In fact, the MIF was a precursor to the whole IGP deal. And when the IGP deal collapsed in 2020, unfortunately, MIF didn't collapse. So MIF was still there. From 2020 up until now, MIF has received 80% of roughly $1 billion in mineral royalties that has come to the state. In fact, according to the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Ghana gets roughly $200 million per year as royalty. So MIF has had control of about 80% of $1 billion between 2020 and 2025. Now, after getting this amount of money, I think that there are two key things that we have to focus on. This audit is great, but there are bigger issues behind this audit. We have to first of all audit MIF's fund inflows and their expenditure. How are they using the money that has come in? In the audits that you intercepted, we see that roughly 2 million cedis have been spent on certain allowances.
For
right?
those for the board.
That
for
has
board
its
members.
own issues that we have to deal with. But we have to audit MIF itself, audit their funding inflows, and how they have expended the money that has come to them.
You know, before the Public Accounts Committee, an officer of MEF gave an explanation, not to this particular special audit, but to the Auditor General's report, I believe, for 2023, in which she makes the clarification that some of the travels they've done in the past were necessary because, you know, you have to promote and do a road show, etc. And so if they spent 11 million well spent.
11 million well spent. But let's ask ourselves, what was the process they had to go through to spend that 11 million? And were those processes followed? If you look at our auditing system, auditors do their audits, they ask questions during the audit, and when you have evidence, you are free to show them the evidence during the audit. When the audit is done and they issue you a management letter, you have 30 working days within which to produce any evidence that you have before the audit report is finalized and presented to Parliament. So they can say 11 million well spent, but where is the evidence? Why were they not able to produce the evidence during the audit? Why has this come up when the audit report has been finalized? So they can't tell us 11 million well spent. They will have to show us that they actually went through the processes. But like I'm saying, there are bigger issues beyond this 11 million and the 2 million that has been well spent. This is an entity that was receiving, in fact, that received 80% of $1 billion between 2020 and 2025. And we have to start focusing on that.
Indeed, Samuel Harrison there is the programs officer of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, and this is something with the audit report now in our possession. You can trust that in the next few days we'll be giving you further and better particulars as to what the auditors found. But as it relates to the amount spent on the foreign travel, these are the specifics.
According to the confidential report by the Ghana Audit Service, the board and key management of the Minerals Income Investment Fund MEF spent more than 11 million Ghana cedis on foreign travel in 2024 without the required approvals. The report stated that the trips were undertaken without prior authorization from the Chief of Staff, the Sector Minister, or the Chief Director. The administrative guidelines for the implementation of foreign travel allowances issued by the Ministry of Finance in October 2020 stipulated that public servants of the rank of director and below must seek approval from the sector minister or, where appropriate, the chief director. However, this wasn't the case. According to the auditors, MEF's disregard for this directive led to the infraction. In response to the audit findings, MEF's head of human resources indicated that all travels requiring approval from the chief executive officer or chief director were duly cleared. He further explained that for international travel requests involving public servants above the director grade, the HR and Administration Department acted on directives from the CEO's Secretariat, adding that all request memos were available for verification. Former MEF CEO Edward Nanayal Kranting, however, stated that the Chief of Staff at the time had been informed of all the trips. But the auditors noted that no correspondence between MEF and the Office of the Chief of Staff was provided to confirm this claim. Speaking before the Public Accounts Committee recently on the 2023 audit report on high expenditure cost on conferences and related activities, acting MEF CEO Justina Nelson explained that the expenditure was necessary to give the fund the visibility and capacity needed to operate its new office.
What really went into it were a few things, that is the training, the conferences, because it's a fund. So we needed to go out to be able to get that visibility and also woo people in, and a few things as well.
Another audit of MEF's financial statements and annual report revealed that the fund also spent over 2 million Ghana cedis on certain allowances within 2 years. In 2024 alone, 1.2 million Ghana cedis was paid as certain allowances, while almost 1 million Ghana cedis was paid in 2023. The board members during the last administration was 9. When Joy News contacted those cited in the audit, they declined to comment. This is Kwetinati's report.
And that's it for News Night tonight. You want to stay with us here on Joy 99.7 FM for Geek Squad. And I say we're late. What is it that you're talking about today? Something very interesting you were whispering to me.
Yep, we are going to be sharing with our listeners a guide to this particular season when you'll be hearing a lot about Black Friday sales, what to do, especially on the internet when you're purchasing. A few things to take note of. We need to share with them so that at least they are much aware and well informed.
Well, I told you my reservations about Black Friday. But, there's a very interesting report that was done by Which in the UK about Black Friday deals. And they found that a lot of the prices that you find on Black Friday isn't exactly the lowest.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes. So watch out, by the way, for those. Because they advertise up to 50%. And then you go, the thing is up to 50%.
So there are some maybe 10%, 20%, some 50,
nothing,
and some yes.
But because
they mark up and then
exactly,
just
you find that a lot of insignificant items there, yeah. But the vast majority of it same price. But you're walking thinking, oh my goodness, it's Black Friday, the euphoria,
you buy it.
And then you're going buy. It's a very good trick actually.
But we'll be sharing some tips on that. So yeah.